Ah, there you are. I was expecting you. Let us begin.
For a kingdom as ancient and expansive as Lordran, there must surely be a great deal of knowledge accumulated by its mighty denizens. On the hills above Anor Londo, a great archive was constructed to hold such knowledge, from tomes and scrolls to forbidden sorceries and twisted experimental subjects. The Duke's archives house all of the darkest secrets of the land. Following the war against the dragons, Gwyn knew better than to leave his allies without reward, and none more so than Seath the Scaleless, the white dragon with a treacherous nature. He was recruited by Gwyn at some point during the war, though it isn't clear what he offered in exchange for his service. It was clearly something that helped turn the tides of war into Gwyn's favour. We know that following the war and the eradication of the dragons, Seath was granted the title of Duke, and was even entrusted with a fragment of the Lord's soul. Such was Gwyn's respect for him. Seath was very different from his fellow dragons in many ways. He was malformed and albino, with tentacles in place of feet, and stricken by blindness. He also lacked the signature stone scales normally covering an everlasting dragon. This, in turn, made him vulnerable, for a dragon's strength lies largely in their scales. It is likely this information that he shared with Gwyn to gain his trust, as it seems that the lords knew to first strip the scales from their foes before being able to slay them. He was known as the grandfather of sorcery, and it was likely Seath that taught the humans and gods how to manipulate magic in the way we see today. It is surely no coincidence that the schools of sorcery in Vinheim are known as the Dragon Schools. But there is one aspect of magic which captivated Seath, a mysterious and previously unexplored school, one revolving around the use of crystal. It is likely this obsession was brought on by his discovery of the primordial crystal, a powerful artifact that granted Seath an immortality unlike any seen before or since. Different from even his fellow dragons, his connection to the crystal meant that his wounds closed instantly, his body healing as though it had never been touched. As long as he had the crystal, Seath truly was an everlasting dragon. And so, in this building overlooking Anor Londo, Seath locked himself away and began to pore over mountains of tomes of forbidden knowledge. Being blind himself, Seath had little choice but to devise a method of obtaining knowledge, and so the Channelers were born. They are among Seath's most senior servants, with 6 eyes capable of obtaining knowledge and disseminating it to their master, as well as to keep watch for another of their master's many obsessions, human maidens. But too much knowledge is a dangerous thing, and Seath's mind was not ready to process all of the many horrors and mysteries within these musty pages. He started to lose himself, succumbing to madness and dedicating himself to experimentation on living subjects, resulting in many of the life forms that now inhabit his domain. Approaching the main gates to the archives, the first thing to greet adventurers is the sight of a long, narrow corridor, guarded at the end by fearsome boars, fully armoured and vicious. These creatures have been well trained, for they will allow their foe to approach before striking, drawing them so far down the corridor that it is near impossible to avoid their charge. And it seems clear these halls were designed with this exact defence in mind. Another prominent feature of these halls are the many statues that line its walls, each of them depicting a woman clutching a flame. Perhaps these art pieces are the result of Seath's obsession with maidens, or perhaps they hold a deeper significance. Pushing past their porcine defenders, the corridor opens up into a wider reception room, with stairs and an elevator leading up into the archives themselves. Arriving at the top, the first thing standing in the path of any trespassers are the group of hollowed experimental subjects. Ravaged by Seath's crystal research, these soldiers' skin turns deep blue and clusters of crystals burst forth in places. Even their very weapons are crystalline, the sharp gemstones serving to enhance the power of their blows. The crystal, however, makes the blades brittle and prone to breaking. It could be that these were originally the soldiers tasked with guarding the archives, or perhaps they are invaders that were captured and subjected to Seath's experiments. They are not the only guards in these archives though, as Seath's channelers patrol amongst the hordes of books, hurling soul arrows at invaders and empowering their allies with their mysterious enchanted tridents. Towards the rear of the archives, a large tower has clearly been converted from a house of knowledge into a house of horrors. Cells have been constructed around the great bookshelves, yet more subjects for Seath's experiments. The residents here are likely captured in Sen's fortress before being transported here, as the serpent men that patrol the fortress clearly serve Seath here, serving as wardens for his makeshift prison. Winding down the stairwell that curves around the tower, we find the largest cell at the base, along with yet more of Seath's experiments. The Pisakas are what remain of the many maidens that have caught Seath's eye over the years. Their bodies have twisted, becoming more akin to a snake, whilst their heads sport octopus-like tentacles. They seem to serve as wardens too, in a sense, for at the first sign of trouble, the serpent men will sound an alarm to rouse these otherwise dormant creatures, although even the guards will rush to get away from these deadly maidens. Upon their death, the remnants of their humanity can be collected, serving as further proof of their origins. But in the case of two of these creatures, we can go a step further and shed some light on their former identities. Two of these creatures will show no aggression like the rest of their kin, instead weeping continuously, oblivious to their surroundings. Upon their deaths, a pair of miracles can be claimed from their bodies. These miracles were granted to the handmaidens of Lady Guinevere, daughter of Lord Gwyn. It would seem that after Gwyn left to link the flame, Seath grew bold enough, or perhaps merely mad enough, to turn against his allies once more. Atop the tallest tower in the archives, Seath has made his home. Surrounded by his tomes and protected by his crystal, any who attempt to face him here would unceremoniously fall. But the primordial crystal is not all powerful. Seath must keep it close by to be able to draw on its power, and so he needed somewhere to hide it away. The grounds of the archives are patrolled by more of Seath's crystal golems, the same design as those that stalk the Darkroot Basin, but these golems have a much clearer purpose. Towards the edge of the archive grounds, the grass and trees give way to a large underground cave system, filled with brilliant crystals of all shapes, sizes, and colours. Descending into these glittering caverns, more of Seath's servants litter the landscape, with several moonlight butterflies perching atop the various crystalline outcrops, whilst golems stand guard atop the crystals that serve as the only footing in the cave. There is even said to be crystal within these caves of such purity it is completely clear, so much so that someone stood atop it would seem as though they were floating. In the deepest depths of these caverns, we can find some man-eater clams congregated around one final chamber. It is possible that these creatures, known for producing curse-resistant stones, could have been drawn to this place by the strong cursing abilities of the crystals, or perhaps they were taken from Ash Lake by Seath to serve him. Whatever the case may be, they can be deadly to an unprepared adventurer. Within the final chamber of these caves, Seath's most prized treasure awaits, hidden away from the world. The powers of this crystal are fearsome, but, not unlike the weapons it produces, it is a fragile thing, and were it to shatter, Seath would be left vulnerable to any who would seek his Lord Soul fragment. And so, as is all too common, when one gathers too much knowledge and hungers still for more, it consumes them. Seath the Scaleless was not the first being to succumb to his quest for knowledge, and in a land such as Lordran, there is always another that stands to continue the work of their predecessors.
The tomes stored in these archives are truly magnificent, a great pool of knowledge, the fruits of superior wisdom and an unquenchable desire for the truth. Some would say Seath had an unsound fixation, but his work is a beautiful, invaluable resource. All progress demands sacrifice, and I certainly bear no antipathy for that wonderful, scaleless beast.
Now go. Whatever you do, do not crack and go hollow, lest my time spent on you be wasted.